Welcome to another discovery journey beyond perception. My name is Simon, and it is my true joy to welcome Rosalind Fritz today. Rosalind, you had a successful career in the performing arts as a singer, went on to build your own psychotherapeutic practice, to then in the 80s join Robert Fritz's company, who became your husband and was a guest also here a couple of weeks ago. And today you work together. You are a master structural consultant and director of the Structural Consulting Certification Program. Welcome, Rosalind.
Wow, it's like you reading that out. It's like I've had 10 lives or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah.
A different thing.
Yeah. What I'm very curious about, and what I would love what I would love to ask you as a start. I mean, exactly with that vast experience in arts and the creative process and human development, having worked in depth, I don't know with how many people, but I assume quite a lot of people.
Yeah, 37 years of it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I started when I was 38 and I'm now 74. So it's quite a long time working with people. So I think at this point in my life, it's like I still have people with new kinds of issues anyway, even though I've worked with thousands of people, of course. So it always amazes me what the human mind, how the human mind operates, and what assumptions people make, and so on. It's really, why people do what they do is always a fascinating question for me.
Yeah, so that might fit perfectly to my question. So when you look back over all those years, and I'm sure you recognize some patterns over the time, and what would you say is like what you came possibly to recognize as like what is really important in life, or what is a foundation for a fulfilled life?
I think truth is the most important aspect of my life. I'm not going to put that on other people. People are free to lie, or people are free to have concepts that they think are true. But it's so helpful if people look at their concepts and think it through being questioned as to whether or not how they think is actually based on the truth and on reality. So that's key. And in the past, before working with Robert's approach, we didn't have this questioning. So in Robert's approach, we have this questioning, and it's rather like, if the brain, here's the brain, and in the brain there's a fixed idea, like my mother should love me. Okay, let's just take an example. My mother should love me. So then, if that was my client saying this to me, I would ask a question. I'm not going to tell them what to think or how to think. I ask them a question. Why should your mother love you? And so this question sits side by side with my mother should love me. Why should my mother love me? And there's this kind of, I haven't thought about that before. I've never thought to think that before, because I've always thought this is true. My mother should love me. But then this brings up this question. Why? And what evidence is there that mothers should love their children or fathers should love their children? What's the evidence, And then in thinking it through, they realize, well, there isn't any evidence. And they could have been carrying this concept for years, And then with that one question, thinking it through as long as it takes, and for them to think it through, never for me to tell them what I think, but for them to come to it by themselves. Oh, maybe it's not true that my mother should love me. This is what I've been putting on my mother all these years, that she's not free to not love me, maybe. Why should she love me? And it just, the wonderful way of working with people, because I'm not telling them anything. I'm not telling them how to think, what to think, but just with the questions, having them think it through for themselves. And that's just so valuable. So that's in a nutshell the kind of work that we do with structural consulting. And I find it fascinating because what people come up with answers to those questions, I never know. I don't know what they're going to say next. So my next question, I don't know what my next question is going to be, which is great. It's like playing a chess game with somebody. You know, they make a move and you make your move, and then you don't know what your next move should be until they make their move, right? And so in that way, it's very clean. It's so clean because I'm not putting them through a preconceived formula. Like, oh, you're a type A person, or you're this, or you're that. So there's no labeling going on, which is really lovely for the client. Because the client, even though they might come in as a client wanting to be labeled, wanting to find, oh, what am I? You know, am I you know, one of the lists that psychotherapy has of you know, what kind of person you are, you know. And so this is rather like going into a tailor and having a tailor-made suit made specifically for you, rather than off the shelf, you know, which doesn't quite fit, you know. And that's how I see psychotherapy, is off the shelf, not quite fitting. So it's a very different way of working with people, and lovely, because I never get tired. You know, I can work with somebody for 3 hours, for however long it takes, you know, and at the end of 3 hours, see this incredible change happen within them. It's almost like their whole body changes, you know. There's this weight lifts off their shoulders because they've had this complaint all their life about, you know, how things should be and how they should live life right, and on and on and on with concept after concept, which is really draining them, because these concepts become obligations to live up to. And so it's incredibly freeing. So I love this work. I love doing consultations with people. So I mean, I didn't know whether you want me to go there and talk about that, but that's, you know.
No, that's yes, absolutely. Yeah, please. Yeah.
And the other thing, I also a lot of people don't understand our work very much because it's from structure. So, and the idea is that the structure a person's in determines their behavior. So if we can go in and change the underlying structure, it's rather like changing the riverbed on a stream of water. You can't say to the water, oh, I see what you're doing wrong. Stop doing it. Of course, poor old stream can't stop doing it.
Just water.
Because the underlying structure of the riverbed has to be changed first in order to create any change. So going in and carving out a new structure without only asking questions is really, really quite lovely, and seeing implication in people's answers. So it's fascinating work, and there are many different concepts that people have. But normally, when I'm working with people, there's one major concept that is kind of running the show, and if I can work with them to have them see that and work through it, and then give it up because, oh, that's not reality. I want to live in reality. You know, most people want to live in reality, and so they're willing to take a look at what they think and why they think what they think, and a lot of what they think is also a strategy to avoid something, or to prevent an imaginary fear from happening, which is actually imaginary, that they have no evidence for, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I think I should stop there, and you should ask me another question.
I mean, what you're just sharing, and what I can confirm, what I personally appreciate very much about what you and Robert are teaching or sharing, is that it feels very agendaless. So that there's really, it opens up a vacuum, you could say, where I have the space to express myself.
Yeah, absolutely. No agenda, no formula. You know, and so when we teach people how to do this, structural consulting, the first thing they have to learn is to start with nothing. No preconceived ideas.
But that can freak out your mind, which wants to know and orientate itself, right?
Oh, yeah, and they want to teach the person, and they want to correct them, and they want to, say, no, you shouldn't think that, you should think this, and we can't do any of that, It's and also, going in to work with somebody, they might not have anything going on, so you can't even have that as a platform to work with anybody. They might present you with a problem that they see as a problem. I don't see it as a problem. They've concluded it's a problem, but I haven't. So I can ask the question, why is that a problem? Why do you think that's a problem? I sleep too much, or I work too hard, or why is that a problem? So, and a lot of these things, of course, come from, we get, quite honestly, from growing up, from our parents, from our peers, from our teachers, and some things we agree with and some things we don't agree with. So it's good to know that we agree with that stuff. It's not like it's forced on us to agree. My mother told me she wanted me to wear bobby socks, those little white ankle socks, till I was 18. I didn't agree. And I rebelled and started wearing stockings at 15. So all sorts of little things we're taught, and we have a choice to believe it or not believe it. And a lot of time when a child doesn't know what to believe and how the world works, they fall into that, oh, my parents think I'm worthless, I must be worthless. And they go through life with that idea for themselves, or all sorts of things, or other people should be this way and that way. And they've come by that, honestly, because they're afraid of life. They're scared of the future. They have imaginary fears that bad things are going to happen. Yeah. Well, bad things might happen. It's not like I'm going to teach them anything that says you're wrong. It's just that we don't know. But they think they do know, and so they're using a lot of their own life energy to prevent stuff that may not ever happen. And what a waste of life doing that. So anyway.
Please, yeah.
No, well, it's this idea that the structure creates the behavior. Psychotherapy gets on the level of behavior. Therapists can see the behavior, and they can see that behavior is dysfunctional. But they cannot get at the root of what's the structural mechanism that's leading to the behavior, which is it's kind of a level below psychotherapy. And that was when I did psychotherapy in England. I was exhausted every night, absolutely exhausted, because first of all, you're not, well, in my kind of therapy that I did, you're not allowed to ask questions. You just let the person talk, So for an hour, they're talking non-stop about themselves and what happened last week, and a lot of detail. And I sit there just, taking it all in, of course. I need to take it all in order to, quote unquote, help them. And that's a bias too. Helping is a bias. So when somebody comes to me, I'm not there to help them. I'm there to see if there's a structure and why that structure exists. And it's an if, so it's not even, I had one student who didn't have anything going on. He had no concepts. Can you imagine that? Going through life with no, he was a bassoon player in England, and he taught music to children in school. And he even had the idea that, why should children learn, And in his own classroom, he had people who wanted to learn at the front of the class, and people who didn't want to learn at the back of the class. Well, none of my business, if they don't want to learn, why should I force them? Why should I punish them? Why should I?
Yeah.
And of course, then people at the back of the kids at the back of the class got interested, because it's pretty boring sitting in the back of a class doing nothing, or just reading a book or something. And they got intrigued about, ooh, what's he doing now with the kids? What's he teaching now? What musical thing is he teaching? And they got interested. And so little by little, they joined the class of their own free will, out of choice, choice to learn, not forced on, which I thought was wonderful. But all my other students didn't believe that he had nothing going on. And every time they sat him down, because we used to practice with each other, they sat him down to do a session with him. They tried to force feed him something. And he didn't have anything going on. He was the nicest guy to be around, because he valued freedom for others, He had freedom as a value for himself and others, which was, people who have that are just so delightful to be around, because there's nothing going on. There's not this idea that you should be a certain way, You should cut your hair.
I did last week.
I should cut mine, right?
I actually did.
Yeah, I have a concept. I should cut my hair. Yeah. Not okay to have long hair.
So when I had a structural consulting session with you, and I'm currently going through the certification, so I have continuously test clients, you could say.
Yes.
And it is a really interesting experience each time, so I can very much affirm what you are sharing. And when I got introduced to, like, I participated in a training with you, and where you shared kind of the principles or the way of facilitating that. One thing which I reflected upon is, what is actually reality? No.
Well, reality changes, obviously, because of time. Yeah. So tomorrow's reality could be different than today's reality. Like tomorrow, I might have longer hair. Because in reality, my hair grows.
Yeah.
Tiny, tiny bit. But so reality. But the nice thing about living in structural tension is to be observant of reality changing. And so you're able to, here's your vision, here's current reality. And looking at current reality in relationship to your vision, which you haven't created yet, it's really important to know, because as you take action towards creating what it is you want, reality changes. To start with, you had no money to create the vision, and then you created some money. So now you have to build in to current reality. Oh, I have this amount of money now saved towards the vision. So, that changes. So reality is evidence-based. So it's quite easy then, if you look to the evidence, what evidence do I have that this is reality? So we're not talking about metaphysics. I don't know what reality exists on Mars. I mean, I just, or in the external universe, or out there, I don't know. All I can know is where I live and breathe. I know my name is Rosalind. Is that reality? Seems to be, and it seems to work.
Yeah.
When I go to the bank, if I give them a different name, it doesn't work. So I can kind of look through the evidence and say, okay, my name's Rosalind. It could have been any other name. My parents could have chosen many, many different names. So on that level, reality is I'm hungry. I'm not actually. So it's okay. But just to go through. Reality is I'm tired right now. Reality is I'm excited about tomorrow on this aspect, and so on. Yesterday morning, I went back to the gym, and reality was I lifted 135 pounds.
Congratulations.
Yeah, because
I heard about you.
I had both my eyes done. I had both my eye lenses replaced. So I had to take 9 weeks off working out. So when I went back to the gym, it was like, oh no, I've lost it. I really have to like build up again. Yeah. And that was reality, is looking at the numbers. Okay, so I'm now here now, my goal is I'm now here and I want my goal to be here. So that's all reality based. And I don't think I could work towards a workout goal without knowing exactly what reality is. You know, what did I lift yesterday, or then, okay, so what do I need to lift next week in order to make this goal in 4 months time, whatever, you know. So that's what I see reality. It's evidence based, and a lot of the time in my sessions, I don't tell people that's not reality. I ask, what evidence do you have that is reality?
It is
which is very different, you know, and with it's like then they have to question, you know, and that questioning is really healthy, so healthy for the mind. Yeah, because then the mind has to start thinking.
Because it didn't before.
Do you have a question?
Yes. So I think the theme of reality, it has been my own curiosity over the last years. What is actually real? And I had very different experience. I investigated very different concepts, you could say, which provide a perspective on reality. And I discovered that from one perspective, even my identity seems to be a concept. And that on the one hand opened up an experience of transpersonal awareness, which is beyond form, but then also that led me to not really being in the here, present. So
we don't really know who we are. You know, I don't know. Ultimately, I don't know who I am. A lot of people think it's very important to know. And to those people, I would ask, why? Why is it important to know? What would you do with the answer? So then that begins its own, you know, do you want to spend your lifetime trying to find out who you are, you know, and then you die. So, and you've spent all this time, you know, I'd rather be able to spend my time perfecting a Christmas cake, you know. I just but you know, a lot of philosophers think it's important to know who you are. I don't particularly. I don't care who I am, which frees up a lot of my head actually, and my time, and it's rather nice, you know, not to have to know, you know, and so I'm not obligated to go and find out. And you know, I think people are free to know or not know. If they want to spend their time that way, it's up to them, you know. But for me, I think it's a waste of time.
Yeah, one could ask, who wants to know anyway who you are, right? What concept is looking for the answer?
Exactly. Yeah, I think Robert put that in his book somewhere. Like, who am I? Who wants to know? A bit of a mind bender.
Yeah, I mean, there are many concepts providing a description on about that maybe hero's journey we are supposed to have here, of maybe making the transition from the concept to reality, or from the mind to the heart, or from
Why?
past-related projection towards intuitive understanding or identity to soul or reactive to whatever expression of love, What do you make out of those
the
descriptions?
only time I think it's valuable to question, as if there's a need, is it going to, if I do question, if I do want to find things out about myself, what's the purpose of that? And once I find that out, what will happen then? What happens from that? And the only time I query things is generally on a skill level, which it's generally goal related. What changes need to be made in order for me to be a better workshop leader, or a better consultant, or a better weightlifter, or a better, what helps me? Does it help me to question how I am? Forget who I am, but how I am. How am I doing? How am I with a particular skill? What supports me? And so in that way, looking at my tendencies for behavior, if I'm onto myself, like I'm not really a morning person, so I don't get up in the morning and do QuickBooks.
Yeah.
I leave it till later, because otherwise, I'm just going to be in a, I just want to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
So even though we do get up early, but my mind really doesn't come alive till around 10 or 11 o'clock. So it's okay. Good timing for you to put me at 11 o'clock because I'm awake. My brain is working well.
Yeah.
That's a tendency I know about. So then I can build that in to how I run my day. Is it better to go and discuss getting a mortgage, for me at 9 o'clock in the morning? No. So I'm going to make the appointment later. Stuff like that. So it's, so that in that way, knowing one's tendencies of how you are now, you can just build that into supporting your day, or your creation. Like Robert, for example, he always writes in the mornings. He will write before anything else, and then that's it. So we always know where Robert is in the mornings. He's writing a new book or something, a script or a film or whatever he's working on. So because he's better off when he writes at that time in the morning. So first thing.
So I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So there's, on the one hand, there's who we are, which is beyond any ways of defining or describing or improving or
well, improving attached to something you want to see created.
Exactly, that's where I wanted to go. But on the other hand, there's something we want to bring to the world, possibly, and related to that, there is definitely aspects which can be or possibly need to be improved to bring that creation into life.
Think with that kind of thing, it's good to look at the motivation as to why you want to improve something, and see, a lot of people think they should improve, and so there's this obligation to improve, and again, why? A lot of people in the world, they want to justify their existence, for example. So they think, well, there's a reason I exist, so there has to be something I'm supposed to do while I'm here on the planet, and
I have a mission, a destiny.
It has to be a good thing. Yeah, it has to be a good thing. And so that's a burden, if it's obligation. And it's not really, see, an obligation is not a free choice. It's a have to. And it's no fun really being driven by that kind of thing and being on a treadmill, with an obligation, no matter if even if it sounds good, oh, my life is, has to have a purpose, and I have to help people and all of that. And at the end of working with somebody with that kind of issue, first of all, they realize that, in fact, they cannot justify their existence anyway, because they already exist.
Because they
already exist.
Oh, yeah.
So it can't be justified. Anyway, sorry. I have to laugh at these little things sometimes. So, once they realize, that it's not something they have to do, because it's not doable anyway, no matter how much even if they, find a cure for cancer or whatever it is, none of that stuff is going to justify their existence, given they already exist anyway. So, so then they're once they're free of that, and then you ask somebody, well, with that issue, well, do you still want to help people? Do you still want to do good stuff? And they say yes. And then you ask why, and they can't tell you. They just say, because I want to, which is really the best answer in the world. And when you ask an artist, why do you want to paint that painting? Because I want to. And yet society, you have to give much more interesting answers than that, right? Because I want the reader, or I want my audience to really get this message in the painting, that blah blah blah, and no, that's not the creative process. And because the creative process is so pure that you're not doing it to create an effect in other people, nothing up your sleeve. You're not trying to manipulate an audience to believe whatever, So message art is really, I think, ridiculous, because it's manipulative. It's telling people how they should be, how they should think, etc., etc.
Which is then really a motivation of fear. Or lack, exactly. Or
if I ruled the world, I'd tell everybody, they should all be vegan. I'm vegan. Yeah. I just wanted to bring that in there. my little manipulation on the world. But in reality, it's none of my business what other people decide to eat or behave or whatever, and unless it they can't kill me. I mean, they can try and kill me. They can kill me. But I mean, in a way, they're not free to kill me, because we have laws, and it's a crime. But generally, it's not my business how other people want to think. When they do a session with me, they're free not to see reality. It's none of my business whether they see reality or not. I mean, I'm going to do my job, and I can take them to the water with my questions. If they don't want to drink it, none of my business. They have to pay me anyway. But yeah.
And maybe just to, if that's possible at all, to compare it again to therapy, would you say that some people, they are so identified with concept that it's just making that transition to reality is just like too far of a
some people are
stretch.
Yeah, they're so brainwashed. It's so fixed. It's incredibly hard, and it's so scary for them to give it up, because they've set such store by it. It's their safety net. And me asking them to think it through with my questions, they feel like their safety net is being ripped from underneath them, and then they don't know where they are. It's very disorientating. And I think that's an excellent thing. I think it's a great thing. If somebody says to me, I'm feeling disorientated in a session, that's great, because I know then that the concept's breaking up.
It's what was perceived as a normality suddenly is recognized as a concept, and you cannot hide it to yourself anymore. in one way.
There's a guy. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. Damn it. He's a doctor. I'll just tell you the story. He happened to notice an ant climbing up a blade of grass. Did you know this little story about the
No,
ant?
I don't. No.
Okay. So he noticed this ant climbing up and down this blade of grass. It got to the top of the blade of grass and then fell down and then started all over again and climbing up the blade of grass, which is not the action, the normal action of an ant.
Yeah.
So he thought, what's going on with that ant? Well, I have the equipment now to actually go inside an ant's brain, which they did. They could actually magnify enough to see what's going on in an ant's brain. I mean, really quite amazing, the technology we have. And he saw that this ant's brain had been taken over by an amoeba, or by a very, very, very tiny, I don't know what you call it, but he called
parasite.
it a parasite, yeah. And that parasite was dictating to the ant to climb up and down the blade of grass in the hope that a cow or a sheep would come along and eat that blade of grass, and then the parasite would be inside the stomach of a cow or a sheep and be able to multiply very happily. And the ant had no power at all to stop that happening. So all he could do was climb up and down. And in a way, people are like that. They've been taken over by the concept, which they think is so real that their actions have to match the concept, which is really quite sad in a way. That we have that happening. I mean, we get born with very little concept, and then over time, the mind makes up its mind about what to think of as real and what not to, and dismiss things and accept other things, and without really any real thought about it, any real thinking. Well, I can imagine as a child that's so. We're not taught to think really. We're taught to compare. And so, we live our lives using a comparative thought process, not a structural one. And so one of the things that my students have to learn is to give up comparative thought. I mean, comparative thought would be, if you cross a road, you look right and see how fast the cars are going. And you look left to see, the other car coming the other way, and checking out comparatively whether you have time to cross the road. That's comparative thought process. And we need it, obviously, for our survival. We can't do without the comparative thought process. But there's another way of thinking, which is structural. Which is what causes what? What's the causality? What's the structural causality of this behavior that we're seeing? And if we can get there, if we see that structure happening, then we can go in and change it. If the person is willing to see reality, that's the caveat. That's the bugaboo, really. To me, if they're not wanting that, then a session is a waste of time. Actually, they had this chance of thinking through as to what reality actually is. And they decided. But it's interesting to me though, that because sometimes I get called up a few weeks later by a client. And they say, "Rosalind, I just got it. I just thought it through. I just." And I said, "Well, how did you do it?" She said, "Well, I know on the workshop, on the consultation, I didn't want to know about it, and I realized that in order to say I didn't want to know about it, I had to see it." Because you can't make that decision to not see something unless you've seen it first, right? So she'd actually seen what reality is and then rejected it. And it took a while, so a few weeks later, here she is, in touch with reality. And it was just like, oh, wow. It's really great. Yeah. Because it can be a little sad sometimes if I work with somebody for a long time and they just don't want to see reality, and they fight against it so much, because it's scary. take away, for them to take away from themselves their blue blanket, their rug that's under their feet, that they think is real. And to be in a place where, you can't control what you can't control, you can't know what you don't know, you have no certainty what's going to happen tomorrow. All of those are pieces of reality. Which people say, no, I know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm going to get up and go to work. Well, how do you know that? Your car might be out of gas, or you can't find a gas station to get to work, or you can't, anything. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know whether we can finish this podcast together.
Absolutely, because the internet is not that bad. Not that bad. It happened before.
Yeah.
It could, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So living in the not know is really actually quite refreshing, I think. But of course, it's an acquired taste.
So I can share my own experience. It was terrifying to question my perception of it. It was terrifying to question my own concepts of who I thought I am. It was, in a way, perceived as horrible thing to do, and very insecure and terrifying, and bringing up fear and tension and resistance. But then on the other side, there was no substance for it. Or that's every time what I experience when I then just
why? But
look at it.
You know why you could do that, though, Simon? Is because you're sane.
Because I'm sane?
Sane. S-A-N-E. Sane.
Yeah,
sane.
okay.
You know the word sane, right?
Yeah, sure. Yes,
you're not crazy. You're sane. And because of that, you were able to think things through.
Yeah, I personally, I have to say, it was a very gradual process over a long time.
You managed it because you wanted to know. You wanted to be in reality. You valued being in reality. So it was worth looking. It was worth the discovery. It was worth the questioning. So a lot of it is like detective work, like Sherlock Holmes. Where's the evidence? Can that be true? But it really takes people wanting reality, wanting to know what reality is in their life. And it is painful and disorientating to give up what you've really told yourself is true for many, many, many years. I had working with this guy in a workshop once, and I think he was nearly 80 years old or something like that. And he was feeling, he all his life, he felt very guilty because he hadn't sent his kids to college. And both his children were also angry with him that he hadn't sent his kids to college. And so he just had that idea, until, of course, he met me. And I asked him, well, why should you send your kids to college? Do you owe them that? Right? Do you owe them that? And then, well, of course, he said, well, from his concept, he said, well, yes, I owe them. Why? Why do you owe them that? Just because you gave, you didn't give birth to them, but that's just because, your sperm begat these two kids. Why do you owe them that? And at 80 years old, he was able to think it through, and he just felt so free. And I said, well, so now, I said, when your kids are on your case about you not sending them to college, what are you going to say? He's going to say, and he said, I'm going to tell them it's none of their business what I decide to do with my own life. It was like, yay! And it was just, and can you imagine, though, for years? I mean, years he carried this guilt, and his kids compounded it too by being upset with him because they blamed how their life went on their dad.
Mm.
You know, if their dad had sent them to college, they wouldn't be in this position now of not having the kind of career that they really had wanted to have. Blah 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 blah. You know. Yeah. So a lot of the time it's about freedom. You know, are you free to choose to send your kids to college? Are you free to not send your kids to college? Both are yeses. You know. So
I think one of the things, I think it was you sharing that with me, was that in reality there is just freedom, there's just free choice, there is no obligation, and every time there comes a should into the
well, it's
onto
not
the
quite that simple. It's not quite that simple.
Okay.
No, I mean, when my mother was alive, and I went back to London where she lived, we'd always take her out for dinner. And why? I mean, she was terrible company. She was very depressing to be around. She complained about her life all the time. And then Robert decided each time to come with me, to support me having dinner, having this terrible evening with my mother. Right? And it wasn't a should, but he wanted to. He made a choice to support me. Yeah. You could use the word should there. Though. I should come and support you. Alongside, I want to support you. It's like, I want to support you is primary. And then because I want to support you, I should. So it's not like all shoulds are you toss them out the window, you know. There can be a place for a should. But then again, you have to ask, what's the motivation for the should? So is it a dysfunctional should, or is it a clean should? You know, I should tidy my room. Why? Because I want a tidy room. I should tidy my room. Why? Because I'm worried about so-and-so visiting today, and I don't want them to think I'm an untidy person. That would be dysfunctional. Because the next question would be, why does it bother you if your friend thinks you're untidy? You know, so on and on. But there's nothing wrong with wanting your friend. I mean, in reality, there's nothing wrong with wanting a friend to think you're a tidy person. So what? You know. So if you can end that with a so what, you're free to think that. You know. So it really depends where you're coming from and whether it matters or not in life. You know. So I found a concept that I had, which is I was going into the front of a hotel. I think I told you this story. I'm not sure. And this guy got there before me and opened the door and went in. And I got angry. And these days, when I get angry, I kind of check out why I'm angry. You know, is it legitimate anger, or is it something going on? You know, why I'm angry. I was angry because I had a concept that men should open doors for me.
I think that's also more present here in Mexico than it is in Germany or Switzerland. Yeah.
Really a crazy concept, really. Very little thing. Tiny little concept, right? Didn't really matter a hill of beans. But here I was wasting my lifetime, wasting my life energy for a few minutes being angry with that guy, right? And really outlawing his freedom to open a door for me or not, you know. And so after thinking it through, now it's like, oh, okay, so what's reality, Rosalind? Okay, what reality? Okay, so it's men are free to open a door for me, and they're free not to. And it's none of my business whether they do or not. you know.
Hmm.
And that was great. And now I can open a door for a guy.
Robert will be happy.
They get very, they look at me very strangely when I do that, you know, because a lot of them have been so well trained by their upbringing, you know, they should open the door for the woman, you know. So there's all those little things.
Hmm.
But why, in thinking it through though, I'm not going to get angry again with that. And so I don't have to waste my time with an anger which has no basis in reality.
So
I just freed myself up just that little bit by thinking that one through, even though it's a really tiny concept.
Yeah. So would you say from your experience that just thinking it through and recognizing a concept as a concept, but then also recognizing what is real, that leads to well, let me try to phrase it in a different way, because very often there's this concept of, and I kind of like need to release something like blocked energy, or and how do you see,
that brings up though, I just want to say something though there, because a lot of people, they say when they say what reality is, they expect some kind of feeling or some kind of connection, you know, in their body or something. And there doesn't have to be. Just to say, you know, sometimes somebody has a really visceral reaction, and sometimes there's nothing. And they think there should be some kind of reaction in their body when they go from concept to reality. It doesn't have to be, just to say that. So sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for clarifying. I think what I would be curious to see your perspective on how concepts which we are not aware of lead to emotional and mental kind of reactions. But then would you say that just recognizing and seeing the concept for what it is kind of also just takes care of that dynamic in itself, so that
it just takes care of it, because you think, well, what is that piece of non-reality doing in my brain? You know, why would I want it? I'll throw it out, you know. And once you know what reality is, it's very hard to go back to saying the opposite. Like for me, my particular thing was with my father. Robert gave me a session in front of, I don't know, probably 100 people. He wanted to show an example of structural consulting, you know? And he said to me, do you have something you need to think through? This is before we got married, by the way, on a workshop. And I said, actually, I do. And he said, well, would you mind me structurally consulting you today in front of everybody, if that's okay? And I said, yeah, sure, you know, it'd be great. So I started talking about, at that point in time, I just sold my business, and I had a dress business, and I just sold it. And I'd also at that time was doing psychotherapy, not Robert's work, because it's like beginnings of learning Robert's stuff. And I had a choice with the money to either buy this really broken down old house and do it up as a conference center, or to buy myself a really nice apartment and rent an extra space to do my work in with people. I didn't quite know how to think about it. So that was what I was working with. That was the initial subject matter with Robert. At some point in the session, I said, my father would be proud of me if I did up the old house. Right? So Robert's question was, well, why does his opinion matter to you? Yeah. And I had to think it through. And I said, well, of course, you know, I mean, that's what fathers are for. Fathers should think well of their kids, you know, all of that stuff. Well, why? You know, how's it your business what your father thinks of you? And it was like the biggest shock in my life to have that question come up at me. You know, it came at me, and I was swimming in this black hole. I was swimming in nothingness. I was swimming. Oh my goodness! It was almost like fainting, although I wasn't fainting. But everything went kind of black for a few seconds, and I kept insisting that it was a father's job, and what's a man doing having children unless he loves them and thinks well of them and supports them and all that stuff. And then Robert had me say, okay, try this on for size. What my father thinks about me is none of my business. And I couldn't say it. I stuttered every time. I couldn't cleanly say it. It took a few times to say it. And each time it was like laying it alongside, it is my business. Having this external, verbal, out loud, publicly, what my father thinks about me is none of my business. So there's this fight going on between the two, and over time, I think maybe, I don't know how long, maybe 10 minutes or something, of really grappling with these two ideas. And I really had no leg to stand on that it was my business. And I saw that. It was a concept. I saw that it was something that I had no evidence for. And that I picked that idea with no backing to it whatsoever. And as I said, what my father thinks about me is none of my business. That's what became real. That's what became solid. And now it's impossible for me to go back and say to myself, it is my business. And at that point in time, my father's relationship with me, my relationship with him, was not on very good ground, because I was always trying to manipulate him into thinking well of me, and also feeding into my head all the choices I made. I put it by, will my father approve of that choice? And so my life was my own. My choices weren't my own. It was always being fed through this concept that, is he going to approve? Now it's like my choices are my own. So I'm free. And to have lived that, well, not 38 years, but whenever I picked that up, maybe as a small child, 6, 7 years old or whatever, holding that concept for 30 odd years, that's a long time. And yet in the space of an hour, Robert freed me from it. And that's when I decided, oh my goodness, I have to learn this stuff. Having had a direct experience of it. So I thought I'd share that with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I've over the last years, I started exploring my own concepts, and I think this is a concept I know very well, and possibly a lot of people out there, that expressing what I want, it's selfish, it's egoic. I cannot just do what I love to do. No, I need to be nice, and be part of society, follow the rules, all those things.
Follow the rules. Find the right way to live. Yeah. I think it's the most unselfish thing in the world to live a life based on truth. Here's the truth of what I want. Here's the truth of where. Based on truth, the vision and the current reality, both based. Wonderful. How could that be selfish?
Yeah. I have been starting to recognize that, and it was very relieving to wake up, or start waking up, to be more and more grounded in reality instead of my own thinking and concepts. And now I can recognize that there's no substance in this concept, but then also I know how it felt before in that concept, and it felt like subjectively as that's how it is supposed to be. And
Yeah, but
just
then you have to live a life where you're being very, very careful on what you choose to do, because it might be selfish.
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
Not a nice way to live, right?
yeah,
And,
yeah.
and also I think that brings with it its own way of being, where you're kind of walking through life without 2 feet on the ground. You're kind of tilted. And I think that affects your relationships with other people too.
The funny thing is, I was actually selfish in
what you were doing.
Exactly, yes, by trying to kind of not be selfish or not to
Right.
to
Exactly.
be good and to follow the rules. But
right.
I actually was not a nice person.
Yeah, because that's self-manipulation. Trying to manipulate yourself into actions because it might be selfish. Into non-action, rather, because it might be selfish. Yeah.
One of the tendencies I recognized when I started exploring concepts, or my concepts, more consciously is, now I need to find all my concepts.
Oh, no. Please don't. I mean, I only look at mine if they come up. I mean, if like the opening of the doors, right?
Yeah.
That one, it just because I was curious as to why am I upset,
Yeah.
But I'm sure I've got loads and loads of other concepts in me, and it doesn't matter, because if you are living in a creative orientation, those concepts aren't there anyway. Those concepts only drive an oscillating structure, not a resolving one. So in a resolving structure, it doesn't matter what the hell you think. Your focus is on what you want to create and the relevant current reality, which changes. You're focused on what actions can I take that's going to support my end result. There's your focus. There's no room for any concept. So they can just be in your head, It doesn't matter. This is why Robert says with his identity book, it doesn't matter what you think of yourself. You can create what you want. Yeah. So there's 2 places to live. There's oscillating structure or resolving structure. And I've seen so often that people get a handle on that major concept that's been running them, like my one with my dad. And then it's so easy then to see, what one really wants, and to go from your rocking chair to a car, from the oscillating structure to resolving structure, and live in that resolving structure so much more. That's not to say we don't, go into that oscillating structure, but then you can recognize that oscillating structure, because there's kind of a different energy in an oscillating structure than in a resolving one, which you start to begin to recognize. So when I'm in my advancing pattern, my here's what I'm going for. If I'm in that, there's no room for my oscillating structure. It doesn't exist in my resolving structure. So if I ask myself, what do I want? That wonderful question, what do I want? And I answer it. And I choose that, right? I choose I want to create this. I'm now in my resolving structure. And the oscillating structure has no power. It pulls the plug on any oscillating structure if you're in a resolving structure. It doesn't matter what you think, I'm at the moment reading Robert's book for Audible, the Robert's book, The Path of Least Resistance. I'm doing the voice for it. And the last chapter I was reading, he was talking about exercise. And here's how your mind goes, okay? I've got a 10 o'clock appointment with my trainer this morning. Oh, God, I really want to stay in bed. And then you get up. And then, oh, I really want a nice large breakfast. And then you have a tiny little something because you're going to work out. You don't want a full tummy. So you find yourself eating a small breakfast. And then you get in the car and say, oh, you know, I could just go to that new bookshop that I've been wanting to go to instead of the gym this morning. And then you find yourself driving to the gym. And so on and so forth. But your mind is doing this, this talk to you about all the other things that you might want to do, you know, like stay in bed longer, eat a bigger meal, and on, right? When you're in structural tension, all of that goes on, and you find yourself going to the gym, which is your end result is a secondary choice to a primary choice of health. I want to be healthy, or whatever it is. So it doesn't matter. You see how it doesn't matter? Because you're not going to take action on those things. So you can let your mind say those things, which it does. You know, I want to stay another hour in bed, or I want, you know, oh, I don't want to clean my teeth, or I don't, yeah. So it doesn't matter. So you don't have to cure those things if you're in a resolving structure, because they have no power. You've chosen the end result. You're going to do it anyway. And nothing else you say about it is going to make a dent in your actions. I don't know if that helps. But...
No, it's very interesting. And I'm just reflecting on my own education, and I'm comparing it to what I'm discovering over the last years. No, no, like that's right. Education. That's helping to throw out to like what I want. No, and would you say, or I mean, probably you have answered it in one way or the other already. Everybody has the ability to create. Are there any requirements or conditions for anyone to be able to create and to draw one's own,
you know, even
aspirations into life?
We've seen people create, and they don't let the circumstances stop them. You know, people with no arms painting beautiful paintings with their feet. Symphonies being created in Dachau, you know, in concentration camps. I mean, on and on and on. And so often people are waiting for the circumstances to be right in order to start creating something that they want to see created. You know? And so their life becomes reacting and responding to circumstances rather than, this is what I want, this is what I have, what action steps do I need to take to go from A to B? Okay, I'm going to take that next action. So wherever they are, you know, even if they're in a job which they absolutely hate, but that salary helps, you know, feed the kids at home, you know. So you decide to keep the job, but you're keeping the job because you want to support something else that you want to see happen. So then the job is a secondary choice to a primary choice. But even within that, you can ask, what do I want? And then you can start to transition, to look, to see, to experiment, to investigate, to see what's out there. You know, how can I create this job, this other job that I think I want more, you know, and then be able to create transition. So it's not like, oh, I need to give up my job because I hate it. And, you know, then you've got nothing and the kids starve. You know, it's like, no. So it's being strategic, but it's also telling the truth of what you want. And even in telling yourself the truth of what you want, you don't have to go and create that thing. I've always wanted a Rolls Royce. But I don't want to look after it. You know, I don't want to pay the insurance for it. I don't want, you know, all of that stuff, or everything else that goes with it, you know. So just because I want one doesn't mean I'm going to go and get one, you know. So it's not like on everything you'd like to create You don't have to create it. But telling yourself the truth that you want it, rather than I shouldn't choose that. I shouldn't want that. I shouldn't want that because circumstances are that, this, that, and the other. You know? And so you start lying to yourself about what you actually want because you're looking at what's possible, rather than telling yourself the truth of what you want, whether it's possible or not. And possible or not possible doesn't even enter into the question, what do I want? It's simply telling the truth. Because you don't know what the future is going to bring. You've no idea sometimes with some of my creations, I have no idea how I'm going to be able to create that. You know, it looks impossible, but you want it anyway. So it's on the table, you know, there it is. I want that. And I'm going to go for that. I'm going to take the action it takes to get there. And it's not all what do you call bells and skittles? It's not all joyous. Not some of the actions you take are really hard to take. But it's a secondary choice to a primary choice. So it's fine, you know. Might be hard, but in a way it's not hard because you know why you're taking it. You know it's going to be serving the end result. So you take it gladly. You go and do the thing, even if it's hard, because you want to see that other thing exist. And you love it enough that you want to see it exist. Like giving birth to a baby that you've never seen, you know. Loving it before it exists is very key, I think. It's very wonderful, actually. And then you're willing to take the secondary choices to pull it off. And some of them aren't always great, but you're doing them anyway.
I mean, when I look back, I come from a very mechanical, rational perspective on life, very reactive to circumstances and a lot of like goals, which I really didn't understand why I need to achieve them, but I did it anyway. And then over the last years, I started like being curious about, is there actually something I want or I would enjoy, because that had no space in my life for more than a decade or so. Like this, there was really a disconnect. There was a vacuum. I wasn't aware of my own wants or desires, and I think that relates to many people in our society, because like I wasn't special in the sense I was just doing what everybody else around me was doing. So I kind of modeled my own my environment, and
so you were in a cookie cutter kind of situation.
Very reactive to outside circumstances. And
you said something just then though about, you know, doing something that you would enjoy.
Okay, that might be a concept.
I don't know because you don't know whether in fact what you create is going to give you joy.
Okay.
Until after you've created it. And in the creative process, you want that creation to have no return on investment. So if your focus is on what will this creation do for me, what will it give back to me, that's, you know, like, okay, I'm going to have this child so that when I'm old, she'll give me beer money or something. You know, as a return on investment, I'll get looked after in my old age if I have a kid. You know, so it's like then the creation isn't free to be itself. It has a job to do, which is to look after you in some way or other, to give back happiness, joy, whatever. So there's no guarantee that you're going to even like your creation. You know, you don't know beforehand. A painter doesn't know whether they're going to actually like the painting at the end of painting it. You know, but they want to see it exist, and the only way they're going to know anyway is by doing it. So if you have to think about, well, is this going to give me this, and this, and this, and you have to kind of weigh up the pros and cons and the ifs and buts and all that, then you're burdening the creative process with having to do the job of giving back to you in some way or other. So it's not free anymore. If that's any help to you.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah, absolutely. And would you say that, like bringing something new in existence, it will always be outside the known to some extent, and so always kind of cause in some way or the other some
and
growth opportunities or to
and also when you
yourself.
create something, it takes on a life of its own also, and sometimes you create something and wow, it's even more than what you envisioned. It's even though you have no expectation or you're not burdening it with it giving back to you, it is, and can be enormous joy. But that's not the intention. That's not the purpose, And so when you have that kind of joy coming your way, when you have not set up an expectation for it, there's the gift that didn't have to be given, and so much more meaning in it than if you have an expectation that something's supposed to give you joy. So you suddenly have this thing giving you joy. It's like, and it's not expected. It's like, oh gosh, that's so lovely. Yeah. And so unexpected and just so almost, I know, a loving act in a way that the creation is giving to you, which you didn't expect.
So one could really like say it's an expression of love, not to create. It is not to change anyone, to heal anyone, to,
that's right,
I don't know, correct something or make something better or worse or whatever. But
I created a couple of Airbnbs recently on our property, because with COVID we could no longer do live workshops in the group room in the barn. So I decided, and I really wanted to share our property with other people, and so to have people come here to do workshops was just so blissful, because everybody loved the space. It's 33 acres on woods and fields and everything. It's just beautiful. And to have people come and enjoy it, and the swimming pool, heated pool and everything, was just great. So I thought, well, what now, And so I created 2 Airbnbs in the barn, and I am so enjoying that, just enjoying them so much, having people come and their expression on their face, their expression of joy of being here and being in this space that I find so special. And then they come, they're complete strangers, never met them before, and finding joy in it, and so I'm getting so much more than I ever thought would happen from having strangers come to the place as guests. It's like, wow, this is great. And it's almost like, the property is loving it. Being used, being seen, being, and it's just great. And I never expected that to happen to that extent, And now I have all these friends now who keep coming back to experience the space that I'm getting attached to, and they're getting attached to me, and my dog, and my dog has become the greeter. Adds down there to say hello to everybody when they arrive in their car, It's delightful. And I never thought I would love creating that, or what came out of it. I had no expectation. It was just so great. It's kind of a case in point, or an example. You just never know. So, yeah.
Dear Rosalind, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing from your experience and educating us and structural
you're a
thinking.
delight. I find you very humble, actually.
Thank you very much.
You have that quality, and I like it very much. It's great, and I felt very at ease with you on this podcast too, which because I didn't know how it was going to go or what to expect, of course. It's been a delight being with you. Thank you.
Oh, likewise. Thank you so much. And just for everybody who's listening and watching this conversation, I will add the webpage to
thank you.
To also, if interested, to contact you for a structural consulting session.
Absolutely. Very happy to. Yeah.
Yeah. If there's anything you want to add.
No, I mean, if people want to contact me, they can contact me through the email that's on the website. So
which will be down here.
Thank you. That's really great. Yeah. And onward and upward with your podcast. I think it's great. Yeah. You're so easy to be with. It's very nice.
Thank you so much. I'm just a reflection of you, Rosalind. Yeah. And of course, our listeners. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and being with us. I wish you well, and I look forward to the next time. What's my potential? What's really inside me? Is it possible to be joyful and to express who I truly am? Do I have unique gifts and talents? If I do, how do I find them? And if I find them, how do I bring them into life? And is it even possible to make a living from what I actually love to do? Those were some of the questions which drove me now more than a decade. And I don't want to give you a definitive answer, but I learned very valuable principles on my quest that helped me to discover who I am and to bring what I am actually into this life, beyond expectations, beyond conditioning, beyond limiting or self-defeating negative thoughts. And now I want to be the bridge and pass those principles on to you, and not only remind you with my words, but actually enable you to discover and experience that for yourself, real self-discovery, that you are a wonderfully creative being, a genius in the truest sense of the word, and you have the potential and the possibility to unfold what is actually in you and set yourself creatively free. This is my mission. Very important, please don't believe my words or possibly your own skeptical thoughts, but check it out, experience it for yourself, and take part in our next seminar, Structural Creativity. More information here. I'm really looking forward to set your creativity free.